And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. We are here today to talk about the hiring of Mauricio Pochettino as the U.S. men's national team manager. We have had 6 years of Triple G. We've had a very, very, very poor run of things recently, and we are in for a new era of U.S. men's national team football. I'm Andrew. Over there is Connor. We are here to chat all things men's national team. How you doing, buddy?
Chelsea makes the world picks. That's all I have to say.
Listen, they have enough money where that can be true. They just buy it, buy it, buy it, and then sell it on.
At some point, it's going to be Chelsea makes every single player that everybody in the world takes. It's going to be like a requirement. You have to spend some time on the Chelsea books before you can go play somewhere else.
Indeedy, indeedy. Listen, we got a lot to chat about with Poch. It's going to be a full Poch episode, so let's just jump in really quick to the scarf of the week. Connor, you're still lacking a men's national team scarf. I don't know how you've gone this long without it, but
They're
what
expensive.
do you got? They're not expensive. You make $100 billion a year.
Hey, get it, get your facts straight. It's only $90 billion a year. Mine is going to be a big stretch because we didn't originally plan to make this its own episode, but I'm going to try to stretch it anyway. So I have my Real Salt Lake scarf here. It
Oh
is
my
an
God.
absolute, it is a beauty of a scarf. And the way I'm going to try to link it is there's going to be a segment I talk about later about maybe there's players that could benefit from the change in coach, and maybe there's a certain player from RSL who would benefit from that.
Somebody call up Dr. Jason. I think he just pulled every muscle in your body making that stretch.
Listen, I had to do what I had to do. All right.
Mine's very simple because I support my country.
Are
It's the
you
Copa
trying to say I don't
America.
support my country?
You don't have a scarf. How are you supposed to support? It's a
You
supporter's
know what?
scarf.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold the phone. I will do you one better. I got my USA jersey right here. You see that? Don't ask me who's on the back. I'm not showing you.
I saw a picture of him in USL one,
Is he really?
or USLC. I can't remember. I didn't know which team he was, but he was at a USL game on the bench. Yeah, you were following Burke back at that time. We're buying the most random people thinking they were gonna break out. He's got Aaron Johansson or like Julian Green or something. I think Adam's got Johansson.
I always go for Daryl, but you probably can't hear me. I always go for random players. I never go for like the star guys. I think
Oh,
it's
you're
more
you're
fun that
you're
way.
not basic. You're not basic like you're not like other
Yeah, I'm
girls.
not like those other girls. I have a I have a Kennedy Chelsea jersey, so that
That
should
is
tell
that
you
is
all
a
you need
good.
to
I
know.
like that one. I like that one. Yeah, listen, let's just jump right into it. I want to start by reviewing his career, and then I want to talk about what he could possibly bring to the men's national team in terms of system and expectations and tactics and things like that. Coach's voice did a really good breakdown of what he was doing at Chelsea, so I dove into that a little bit. And then what is the ceiling for the men's national team with Mauricio Pochettino? We'll cover all of that today. So I will start by just going through his career because I don't think there's not much to converse about stuff like that. It's kind of just what he did. So Mauricio Pochettino, or Poch as his friends call him, I am his friend, I know him very well, has this really interesting career, right? He had a good playing career. He ended in Espanyol in 2006, and then 3 years later, he was their manager. Over 3 years, or over 4 years, he helped them finish 10th, 11th, 8th, and 14th, averaging 1.22 points per game. Okay. He then moves to Southampton for two seasons where they finished 14th and 8th after going back to back promotions. He took over in match day 23 when Southampton were 15th and did such a good job, they moved up to 14th. Crazy. But the season after that, he got them to an impressive eighth place finish. Following his time there, it was his most memorable move and also his most successful move to Tottenham Hotspur, bringing a team consistently outside the top four into multiple third and second place finishes between 2016 and 2018, finishing runners up in the EFL Cup in 2015, and most importantly and most memorably, a second place finish in the Champions League 2019. He then left Spurs and headed to France, where he took up the most lucrative project assembled in European football, the PSG Super Team. Di Maria, Mbappe, Neymar, Messi, Icardi, Ramos, Kimpembe, Marquinhos, Navas, Donnarumma, Hesse, former Stoke legend.
Had to slip that one in there, didn't you?
Jason, don't ever say we don't think of you. A super team of the likes FIFA couldn't dream of. His reward, losing the league for the first time in like 10 seasons in his first year, an early bow out of Champions League in both the semifinals and round of 16, a French Cup title, a French title the year after, and a French Super Cup. Then he was quickly removed from his post at France. And what happens when you're an underachieving performer that's looking for a lot of money? You end up at Chelsea FC, which was his final stop before where he is now, where he was in charge for one season, given like $1 billion, and finished in sixth outside of the Champions League spot. Thoughts on his career path, and how he is just the epitome of Chelsea Football Club right now, taking over overhyped people who haven't won much and paying them lots of money.
I think it's been a really good career path in terms of like showing that he's been successful at multiple locations. He's not kind of like a one system guy where he's come in and he's like, I need to play my system. I need to have my players. Like one thing I was considering when I was looking at it, and I didn't look into the numbers of it, like who exactly moved where and whatnot, but it felt like he had jumped around teams and he wasn't one of those managers that's like, I'm going to join this new team and then I'm going to sign all these players from my former team because I need all these guys because I know how to win with them. It seemed like he could jump to certain like different places and get the job done with the guys he had available to him. And I think one area that you hadn't covered in terms of his career as a coach is his ability to kind of build up players and make a name for them. I think back to Tottenham. Harry Kane wasn't a name that probably anybody knew before he had joined Spurs, and he gave Harry Kane a shot. And now look at Harry Kane. He's arguably one of the best strikers in Premier League history. Guys like Dele Alli, who we've seen what happens after his time with Poch. Like he completely fell off the map. But when he was in his prime with Poch, he was one of the best playmaking number 10, like one of the best number 10s in the league, let alone in the world. I think back to last season with Chelsea, Cole Palmer. He was obviously an academy guy who had a lot of he had some hype coming from Man City, but for him to hit the levels that he did last season, I think was definitely outside of probably everybody's expectations for him. And he has absolutely blossomed, and that was under Pochettino. So that's something I'm really looking forward to him hopefully being able to do with the USMNT as well. Bring in some of these guys that have been overlooked who can flourish under him.
Somebody mark the timestamp. Connor has jumped ahead in our program. Whatever, how long did it take him? 10 minutes? Great. Also, not going to let it slide that you really combined all of those players that he turned up with Cole Palmer, who reached those levels as a pen merchant. Not acceptable.
He is not a pen merchant. Don't even try that.
Stop it.
Don't even try that. You're just a
Stop it.
hater. You're a Hall of Fame level hater.
So yeah, you jumped ahead here, but listen, he hasn't won a lot in his career in terms of titles, right? But as you just mentioned, he does have this reputation of having a lot of highly talented players emerge under his leadership, right? You mentioned Harry Kane, Heung-min Son. Those are ones that stand out most to me. But I look back at his time at Southampton, right? And players who were given the chance to play Nathaniel Klein and Luke Shaw as wingbacks, right? James Ward-Prowse, Adam Lallana, Callum Chambers, and Morgan Schneiderlin, all to varying degrees, but players who were relatively successful coming out of his leadership. And I think you make a good point about what you want to see moving out of there, and what that could mean for the group. I kind of was going to put that in our final section, but let's move it around a little bit. How competitive can you make the USMNT, and are we going to see the USMNT be successful with him? How successful is he going to be? Is he going to do it with the players that are there? Is he going to try and develop? What do you see his impact on the USMNT being?
So the most encouraging thing for me is his ability to win big games. Like in terms of, I think back to his time with Espanyol and with Southampton, where he had results with those teams who are clearly on paper worse teams than a lot of the bigger teams in those leagues. And he was still able to not only get results, but win big games. Like with Southampton, he had wins against Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea. Like that Southampton team on paper should be losing those games, and he was still able to get results. Espanyol, same thing. He had wins against teams like Barcelona. So that's encouraging to me because I feel like that's something the US has been lacking for a long time, especially with Greg. We were just incapable of being able to get results against teams that are a step above us. Your big teams in Europe, your big two, I mean, big like four in South America that we just haven't been able to compete with and have always been a step behind. We haven't been able to close that gap and make that step forward. And I think Pochettino could do that for us because he has history doing that. Whereas like Greg coming in, there wasn't really that on his CV. You know, like he coached in MLS, which has a lot more parity. There's not as many situations to be playing against teams that are, you know, a whole step ahead of you. And Greg played even more so, I would say, in a more parity driven league because he played an older MLS, or sorry, he coached an older MLS, which I think was more even playing field than it is even now. And then I think he was in like Finland or something, one of the Scandinavian countries. And I don't think there was going to be a lot of situations there where it would be something similar to that as well. So that's the biggest takeaway. Like, that's my most exciting thing about him coming in. In terms of players, I definitely think there's going to be new faces getting involved in the team. I don't want to jump into point number two, but I think the way that he plays could result in
Jump around,
new
jump
people.
around. Do what you got to do. We're gonna blend it all together anyway.
All right. So then I think Pochettino has historically played a 4-2-3-1 high press. So I think if he's going to instill that with the USMNT as well, there's going to be definitely new players who haven't gotten a lot of, face time with the team coming in and getting involved. And I think there's going to be even guys who have been getting involved, getting even more game time. So I think if he's going to go with a high press, someone like Brendan Aronson, who just has an infinite engine, is probably going to get more game time and get more opportunities because I think he fits a high press well, even though he may not necessarily be getting the goals and assists that we want him to get. I know everybody's like clamoring for John Brooks to get back in the team. I don't think Poch coming in is going to all of a sudden open the door for guys like John Brooks, but I think if there's people that fit the system he likes to play, they can get more opportunities. And surely we're going to see new faces get involved in the team. I don't think it's going to continue to be the same group of guys every single time.
Yeah, well, let's chat then about, what this means for the men's national team. And I think it's inevitable that within the next year and a half there are going to be new faces in there, right? That's just going to happen. No doubt about it. A lot of those younger guys, I think, players who were on the bubble, Aiden Morris is one that comes to mind just because he played yesterday. Guys like that are going to get almost, I want to say, a fair shake where it's all brand new, right? Everybody's got to earn their spot again, which I think is really good. But I also think that it comes with positives and negatives, right? So on a positive side, he's a big name and he carries a different weight in the locker room, right? You kind of know that when you're in the presence of, I'll use the term greatness, when you're in the presence of greatness or somebody with such a good aura about them, that there's just a little bit more respect and players are going to play a little bit harder and what have you. Then there's also that idea you mentioned that he's got a high pressing 4-2-3-1 sort of play out of the back, get the ball in the box, right? It's a simple, clear identity that is easy to implement when you only see a group of players a couple times a year, right? It is a really, really oversimplified way to do things when you have not only do you have players that you only see a couple times a year, but they all come from different setups, right? They all come from different places. His experience managing big personalities, getting them to finals is always nice to see, no doubt. But that kind of is the end of my okay, this is kind of good because my worries list is a little bit longer. And that's always the case with teams that I like because I can't have nice things. So firstly, we mentioned he hasn't managed in the international game yet, which is a completely different game. As much as you want to say like, yeah, he's done really well with the group that he's gotten. The last two jobs that he's had, so since 2021, have been backed by the Prince of Saudi Arabia and Todd Bowley. Like the amount of money and not in terms of just not in terms of just transfer value, but wages and stuff too. It's not insignificant, right? You can't do that with a national team. You have to figure out how to work specifically what you got. Now, that's not as big of an issue that I have because, as you mentioned, he's done that before kind of with Spurs, right? Here's my biggest kicker, right? Everybody's all hype because he's not Greg, right? He plays the same shape. 4-2-3-1 and 4-3-3 are the same shape. You're just moving your wingers higher or lower. They all have relatively the same roles and responsibilities. It's very, very likely that we're seeing something very similar in the attacking buildup. Defensively, we might be a bit more aggressive, right? Pressing high and whatever. But the attack is going to be very, very similar. I'm not like all these people are like, oh my God, we're finally rid of Greg and his 4-3-3. Like people blaming the loss to Canada yesterday because we're still playing the 4-3-3 Greg system. This is not, I mean, there are subtle differences, sure, where you're letting these players move into, and I think that'll be the positive change of it. But it's not like we're going into a 3-4-2-1 Vanny Sartini, magic formation, right? Like it's gonna be something else. And you tie that into the fact that this team isn't that good. And I know that we're all like, oh, golden generation, golden generation. You're talking about Greg not being flexible enough to change tactics. This group cannot play out of the back, like consistently gives the ball away time after time after time again. And Poch is insistent that his teams are going to play out of the back every single time. So right now we don't have a goalkeeper who can play with his feet. We have center backs who can't make a pass to save their life. Center mids who try to do too much because they don't trust their center backs. There's a whole thing that he needs to reset within a year and a half. I don't see it being like a massive change right away. I think it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to involve, as you mentioned, the replacement of a couple players. So we're gonna have to go young. We're gonna have to try new people. And like I wouldn't be shocked if our first couple of meaningful games we struggle a little bit. And the problem is those first couple of meaningful games, or do we have Gold Cup 25?
Probably, but they probably won't bring like all the usual guys. I mean, we usually rotate the squad for a Gold Cup.
Yeah, it is Gold Cup 2025. That's what it was. Well, no, we usually rotate it because they're doing something else, right? Nations League or whatever. So either way, those we'll try to. So you got Nations League too. They're all playing their qualifiers right now, but end of the day, like we're not playing against the Brazils, the Colombias that we did going into Copa America. So I don't know. I think there's not a lot of time to figure it out, and I'm not negative about it. I'm cautious about it, if that makes sense.
I get it. I get it. But I think, and you mentioned like the similar tactical shape. I think he'll probably, and you mentioned this a little bit too, change the way that they work in that shape, like how they attack and build up in that shape. And I think your worries in the back line are definitely valid, for sure. I think there's a very much lack of ability to play out of the back with who we have been currently playing with. But I like to think that nobody in the back line has a safe spot. Like I think of a guy like Pooley, right? Like Pooley's gonna have a place in this team. Like he's not gonna sub out Pooley no matter like how he's building tactics. Like he'll find a way to get Pooley in there. I don't think the same is going to be said for anybody in the back line, including the goalkeeper. I think all those spots are going to be up for grabs. I think Poch is going to experiment with guys and whoop, pause. I think Poch is gonna I think Poch is gonna take opportunities to give people more shots in terms of the back line and bring in new faces, and he's gonna find the guys that work with his system. I don't think he's just gonna be like, like we're keeping the same shape. We got to bring Tim Ream back again. Like I definitely don't think that's the case. I think he's gonna find the people that he wants to fit his system, regardless of what team they're playing on in Europe or how much Riz or whatever the hell they say they have. Riz
You're
aura,
so hip,
aura,
bro.
aura, aura is the word. That's
You're
what it was.
so hip,
How much
bro.
aura they have. This
No,
guy
for
has so
sure.
much aura. We have to put him in the back line.
No, for sure. And that's
This
that's
is
the
why I
one
delete
thing
Twitter.
that's the one thing I'm hyped about is that it's gonna for the majority of the team. And again, everybody's like, "Oh, nobody should be safe." Anthony Robinson's safe. Christian Pulisic is safe. Right? But for the majority of the team, everything's up for grabs. And that is really exciting because you don't know what you have until you try it. And that could mean a whole bunch of different things, which is something that I think the team needs. And we talked about Greg a little bit being stale in his player choice and not really experimenting too much and that sort of stuff. So I am really interested in how he goes about this, right? How does he go about it? Is it going to be, I'm going to give everybody a run out like Nations League, Gold Cup, friendlies, whatever, and I'm going to try everybody in the pool from A to Z, and you're going to get one chance to impress me and do it, and you're great? Or is he going to try and roll out the guys that he already kind of has a thought that are going to be in his plans? I don't know. But yeah, I'm interested. One of the things I noticed with his system was the fact that he varies those wide players, the outside players in that three pack from either going forward and getting involved or pinching inside and creating inverted overloads. And that's something we didn't see a ton of with Greg. It was always wide, 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 wide. So if we're creating more central players, do we have the technical ability to be successful there? And if it's players like Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic who start out on the wings and then come inside, would really love to see something like that. So as much as I'm cautious about it being the same old style, I want to clarify, like, I'm excited that I think it will be different, but it's not going to be drastically different, and the biggest worry for me is the fact that he's huge and playing out of the back, and we've already seen that this is not a team that can do that. So who comes in, who makes that change, and on the flip side, what does he do to make those players better, right? Can he, as an individual, bring that level up just a little bit where he can run his system properly, right? So the last question, right? How successful can the USMNT be here? Where is their ceiling right now? What do you think?
I love the idea of bringing in a European coach. I had been in favor of this even when Greg was still in charge. We talked about this before. I just think it's a fresh tactical look at this team. I think the way that we were playing under Greg was just not the right way to do it with the personnel that we have. And I think Pochettino could shift us in a direction that works better with what we have. And to me, that sees them take a step forward. I don't see them in a position where they're all of a sudden like challenging top 10 in the FIFA rankings consistently, like pushing for number one, like as good as like prime Brazil, Argentina, Italy, and all that stuff. But I like the fact that I feel like we would have chances against these bigger teams. And that's something I haven't felt for this team in a long time, where we could now go into a World Cup, get out of our group, and actually have a chance to compete and win a couple of games and get deeper into these tournaments. Because as of right now, it was like, all right, we get out of the group stage. That's what we expected from this team. And then it's like, all right, we're immediately facing a team that's actually competitive and isn't just like a team out of El Salvador. And all of a sudden we don't know what we're doing and we look like a mess and we get out coached and we get bounced. So I don't necessarily think that Poch coming in is all of a sudden going to just flip the switch and we're going to be the best team in the world. But I think it gives us more opportunity to win a couple of those big games and maybe see us in like a quarterfinal, semifinal in the World Cup. I think that would be a good spot for us because, like you said, there's just not a lot of time right now to all of a sudden implement and make all these changes happen right before 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, right? Managers can make a difference in a team, but I think the sole impact of the manager on this group specifically is not something that's going to jump us to a top five team in the world, right? We're not winning the World Cup this year or in 2026. Like, not Poch doesn't make us a World Cup contender, right? But he might get us to a point where we can successfully be the best team in our region, right? And really, what I want to see at the end of the Poch time, which I think is after the 26 World Cup, I don't think they bring him back to go for 2030. They should. But I think that at the end of his time, if you are talking about the best teams in the Americas, North and South and Central and what have you, and it is Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia, and the US as the top five in the Americas, then he's done a good job, right? Because I don't think right now you can look back and say, yeah, the US is a top five team in the Americas right now. We're just not, right? And it sucks to say, but we're not. But if he can take us to that level and maybe, pull out a round of 16 win in the World Cup, get us to the round of eight, I think that's a successful run at this moment. And there's still a whole year for individual improvement at club level and players to improve and fill in the gap and what have you. But we're not one manager away from being a World Cup finalist, right? We're like six players away from being a silver generation, not a golden generation, a silver generation. Like, we aren't as good as we think we are yet. We can get there, but we're not there yet. And that's my thoughts on the Poch drama.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Yeah, like I said, I don't. I think it's going to be covered a lot, and I think it's a it's going to be a hot topic, but at the end of the day, right? The only thing you do is go out there and do your job, right? If Poch comes in and says we're going to play out of the back and you can't do it, you shouldn't be brought in. Now, if everybody in our entire pool can't play out of the back and Poch doesn't change his system to fix that, that's a problem. But I am, it'll be interesting to watch for sure. There's not a lot of games coming up. Gold Cup's going to be a big one. Yeah, very excited to see what happens. Hopefully, he gets us to a good point where whoever takes over after him is starting off not from the bottom like he is right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would be useful, at least for him to just get us in a better spot. Like, even if he just comes in and like gets more eyes on the game, like I think that would be helpful at the minimum, you know, get the next generation a little bit more inspired because I feel like they've got to be feeling a bit uninspired watching this current USMNT team.
Yeah, it's gonna be. He's got a lot of work to do. Let's put it that way. He's not coming into a Brazil and trying to take him from semifinalist to finalist, right? Um,
Yeah, he's not walking into a PSG.
yeah, exactly. So we'll see how it goes. And again, you saw what happened with PSG. He came in a team that had won seven in a row, got better with the best players in the world, and then lost.
Well, I
So
mean, he did come in halfway during that season.
yeah, don't give him excuses. We are the Wilfred Nancy hype train, and this is derailing our hype. So
Poch is just setting up the team a little bit better, so when Nancy takes over, he carries us to a World Cup victory. Simple.
sure hope so. Thanks everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on all forms of social media so you can interact with us. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you know the next time we go live. We are up with some more history, with some more what ifs, some more news. It's all over the place. So make sure you follow us for that sort of stuff. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.